Scano Courtney Nigiaso. Hello everybody, my name's Courtney and I'm excited to be doing a painting tutorial with you guys for National Youth Week. I have a picture here of the painting that we're going to be doing. It's just a simple seascape with a sailboat, but I really like the vibrant colors and I thought it would be appropriate to do with you guys. I'm just going to walk through some of the things that we're going to be needing today. So in your kits you would have received your canvas. You would have received your paints. I'm going to be using red, blue, and yellow, but if you have paints at home, you're more than welcome to use those. You know, change the colors, add your own creative flair any way that you would like. We're also going to be using black and white, and you also would have received paint brushes. So the thicker one we're going to be using for the background, and then the thinner one we'll be using to paint the sailboat. A couple other things that you'll want to have on hand is some paper towel and a cup of water, just to rinse your brushes. Okay, so I'm going to get all set up and I'll be back with you in a moment. I'm using a little piece of cardboard for my palette and I'm just getting my paints ready, yellow, red, and I'm going to use lots of blue. We're going to start by grabbing our thick brush and our glass of water. You're going to want to just wet down the brush a little bit. You don't need to saturate it, but just get it a little bit wet. It'll help the paint move around on the canvas. I'm going to start by loading my brush up with blue paint. I'm going to start at the top of my painting, and I'm just going to apply the blue paint back and forth. I'm using pretty big brush strokes. You can be really loose with this. You don't need to be worry about detail for this. This is going to be our sky. And our sky can look like absolutely anything. So I'm going to get the blue on there and I'm going to introduce a little bit of red paint just on the corner of my paintbrush. Like this. This helps blend it in and start to introduce the red as opposed to being a hard line, so you'll get that gradation and you'll start to see hints of purple and the colors mixing. I add a little bit of water to help blend it. It makes it a little bit easier. If you find that it's not stretching far enough, that's a little trick that you can use. So I'm just going to continue going back and forth, adding blue or red or yellow, whichever you like. Our skies are all going to end up looking a little bit different. I'm going to continue to blend in these colors, just using the paint that's left on my brush. I'm going to work those colors in together. Once I'm happy with how my blue and red look, I'm going to introduce more red, and I'll use this as my main color. So I'll add it to my brush, but you'll notice that I didn't clean my brush off. I didn't get rid of the blue that's in there. This will help create a seamless gradation by introducing those little bits of blue. So I'm just going to go back and forth with the red with the same kind of brush strokes that I used with the blue. I want to add a little bit of blue paint to my brush. I'm going to add in a couple dark spots here in the sky before we get to the yellow. You don't need to do this. It does make it a little bit murky because the blue and yellow don't mix as nicely together, but it's totally up to you. And if you do decide to do it, look how quickly my brush strokes are. You can do this really loosely. You don't have to take too much time being too precise. You don't need to worry about that. As long as we're blending it out back and forth and we blend it all and you're happy with it, then that's great. Blending is really important. It just makes it look very seamless. So we go over it as much as we feel we need to. And remember, you can always add a little bit of water to your brush if you notice the paint is starting to dry up or if it's just not blending the way you'd like it to. So I think I'm happy with that, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. And I'm going to use the same technique. I'm just going to use big brush strokes and try and blend it in as much as possible. I didn't like how the yellow was starting to blend, so I'm going to reintroduce some red back into the painting down here towards the bottom. And if there's any area of your sky that you don't like, you can always go back in with a different color and just blend it in the way I am here. This helps give your background a lot of depth. It adds depth to your painting. So now I'm going to introduce my yellow using the same technique as before. I've got yellow on one side and red paint on just the tip of the corner of the paintbrush. And I'm going to go make wide brush strokes. And I think this will help introduce that yellow a bit better as opposed to with the blue. You'll start to see those orange colors as opposed to the blue and the red and the yellow being mixed together. It's like a murky purple. And you can introduce as little or as much as you want. And I'm going to start moving it upwards just to try and get rid of some of that blue. I want to see more oranges and yellows and reds in my sky, so that's why I'm moving it up. So here I have my brush loaded with a little bit of each color, and I'm going to try just flicking my brush across the canvas, and this will help create some highlights in the sky. And because we have all three colors, you don't really know exactly what you're going to get or how the colors are going to blend. I'm going to use this technique again once I touch up some of this blue. I want to make this blue a little bit brighter. I'm happy with how my sky looks, and now I want to move on to the yellow. Before we do that, we need to give our brush a really good clean. So you're gonna swirl it around in your water and just try and press out any extra paint and wipe it off on your paper towel. I'm going to introduce a little bit of the white into our painting now. So I'm just going to add a little bit to my palette here. And we're going to use this with the yellow to help give it some opacity. We're going to add it to the bottom of our canvas. You don't need a lot. We're just going to use enough to allow it to blend nicely with the yellow. We don't have to worry about filling this space. But you could also choose to not use the white, and you could see how that turns out. Maybe your painting will look a little bit different. Here I'm using really quick brush strokes, and I turn the brush on its side to try and blend it a little bit better. You're absolutely welcome to do that, but if you want bigger brush strokes, you would use it wide. I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow and just flick my brush using that same technique. Get it into the red. See how it's blending? You can see those oranges coming through really nicely. Yeah, I think I like that. So I'm gonna add a little bit more white down here at the bottom, just to blend it out nicely. Yes, I quite like that. So I'm gonna clean my brush off just so it's a little bit dry. Remove some of that yellow paint. And I'm gonna go in with some blue. And here I'm gonna draw my horizon. And you can pick wherever you want on your canvas to draw your horizon. It can be really low, like I'm gonna do mine, or it can be higher, more towards the middle. Wherever you decide you want your sky to meet the water. You just grab some blue and you drag your brush across the canvas, like that. Next, I'm going to continue painting our water below the horizon. So in order to do that, I'm going to drag my paintbrush with the same paint on it all the way across the canvas in the opposite direction. And I'm just going to go back and forth, using up all the paint on my brush. And if you need to pick up more paint and put it on your paintbrush, you can absolutely do that too. Now I'm ready to start adding some of the other colors that the water is reflecting from the sky. So I'm going to add a little bit of red, and this is going to end up acting as an undertone in the painting. What I mean by that is it's going to be laying beneath the main part of the painting. We're going to add some really vibrant highlights and hard lines in the water. I'm going to blend in this red the best I can here before moving on to using different colors. I'm going to clean a little bit of the excess paint off my brush, just flicking it on the paper towel a little bit. And I've picked up a little bit of blue paint. And I'm going to start moving it across the canvas, just underneath the horizon. I'm going to put some defining lines in the water now. I'm picking up some yellow paint. I want to start to introduce some of the highlights and the waves in the water. So I'm going to do my sun on this side of the canvas. And you can choose to put your sun anywhere. You could put it smack dab in the middle. You could put it on the right. But you're just going to grab a little bit of paint. And it's okay if you, as you drag it along and it leaves like a little glob of paint. That's intentional, but it's also okay if it blends together because it's still pretty wet, this paint down here. Next, I want to paint our sun. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow and I'm going to draw a line just above the horizon line. And then I'm going to wipe off the excess and draw a semicircle on top of the horizon line. You can do this wherever you choose to put your sun. Unfortunately, I didn't clean my brush before I started drawing my sun, so I have a little dark spot. Now you can choose to leave this if you have something like that, but I'm going to try and touch it up. So I'm going to give my brush a clean, and I'm going to go in with some white, just so I can try and lighten up that yellow. I want my sun to be fairly bright. And the good thing about painting is that even if you make a mistake, there's always a way to fix it. So don't get discouraged at any point. There's always a way to fix it, okay? Now we're just going to go back into our water, adding some more of those hard highlights in the water. You can use whatever color you find works best for you. I'm adding a little bit of red underneath the yellow. And then I'm going to go in with the blue. So I think the majority of my water is going to be blue with those reds and yellows and greens coming through. So I'm just going to pick up blue and loosely plop it on there. Just let it organically form the waves. It'll do the work for you. I was always taught that no painting is complete until you paint the edges of the canvas. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just taking the blue and I'm painting the bottom side of the canvas. I'm going to do my best to match the sides and the edges to what's on the front of the canvas. Now you guys don't have to do this, but it's entirely up to you. You can join me or you can just leave them white. It's up to you. I am just finishing up the edges of my canvas, adding a couple more details. If you'd like to do the same, you're more than welcome to do so. I was just adding a couple more yellow flecks in there before I move on to painting our sailboat. I've started by adding some black paint to my palette. I'm going to pick up my small brush and I'm going to dip it in the water and get it wet just like we did with the first brush. I'm going to use a little bit of black paint and I'm going to start drawing my sailboat. I haven't left a lot of room in my water for a boat, but if your horizon line is a little bit higher up the canvas, then you'll have more room to paint your boat. I'm going to start by drawing the bottom side of the boat. You can start by drawing the top side if you'd like, if you'd find that easier. For the top side, we're just going to draw a straight line following the line of the water or the horizon line. And it can be as big as you want or as small as you want. And then we're just going to take the black paint and we're going to fill in that shape. And the shape is kind of like a canoe. You want the edges to dip in a little bit. You want the top to go relatively straight across, but don't stress if it's not ruler straight. And we're just going to fill in those lines. Next, we're going to start drawing the sails on the boat. We're going to draw a straight line almost all the way down to the boat part in the water. I think I'm going to bring that line just past the horizon line though. We're going to be creating a triangle shape. It's not an exact triangle, it can be a little wavy, it might be blowing in the wind, so don't worry about having perfectly straight lines for this. Next, we're going to draw another line going up the side of the sail that you've already painted. You can bring this line as far up as you'd like. You can make it past the existing triangle sail, or you can make it shorter, or you can make it the same height. We're going to continue drawing our sail on the other side of the boat by bringing that same kind of line across. And using the same technique, we're going to bring that shape up and connect it to the top of that line that we drew. We are moving on to our final part of our painting, and all we have left to do is add some waves crashing underneath our sailboat. So in order to do this, I'm going to load my palette up with some fresh blue paint and some fresh white paint. Using a small brush, I'm going to load it up with some blue paint, and I'm just going to add it to the bottom of the boat. Now this is going to be hard to see because we've painted it blue underneath, so it's pretty dark, but we don't necessarily need to see it. We just need the white that we're going to use on top of it to mix well. So this is going to help the white blend. Using a little bit of white on my brush, I'm going to start applying it to the top of the blue that I laid underneath the boat. I'm going to use short brush strokes, and I'm going to kind of flick my brush in an outwards motion away from the bottom of the boat. I'm going to repeat this process until I'm happy with the opacity of the white, with how bright the waves are, and how well they're blending with the blue underneath. If you don't like the way your waves look, you can always go in with another color and touch it up. I'm using blue to touch up some of the spots that I don't like. After you've done this, you've completed your painting. All we've got left to do is clean up our brush and clean up our space and enjoy our painting.